This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply, located in the Gem City of Dayton, Ohio. As a proud sponsor of this episode and the Brickyard Network, we are happy to help you with all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs by providing the best customer service and world-class workshops. Visit CornellStudioSupply.com for 20% off the largest ceramic book selection of all time. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters by potters.
Hola, it's Rose. I wanted to give you a quick update on what the Ceramic Materials Workshop team has been working on in the workshop. If you haven't heard yet, we started translating our popular online courses into other languages, starting with Spanish. Over the next year, all our courses will be available in Spanish, but right now you can jump right in and start with the middle glazes or self-guided crystal ball. To find out more, head on over to ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com. Hasta luego! We hope to see you soon!
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze. Hello, Matt and Rose.
Hello, Kathy.
Hey, Kathy.
I'm so excited to see you. Although I see you in many different ways. I see you, of course, on the interwebs. In my nightmares. I wasn't going to say that.
He's in mine too. It's okay.
She's afraid there's a monster in the house, and it's me.
Oh, no. Oh, no. No, I've been watching the YouTube channel. It's so fun. I really enjoy it. And it's like, looks so professional. So good on you, Rose. I just try and poke in to see what jewelry Rose is wearing.
Oh, I know. I love the jewelry. It's so much fun.
As a Cone 6 lover, despite knowing you, you had one episode where you were talking about Bristol glazes and not being like durable. And I didn't quite catch all that. So what were you covering there?
Yeah, this is in a video where Bristol. Actually, I should start with that. What are the Bristol glazes? We have talked about them on the show, but it's always worth readdressing. So when we're talking about lowering temperatures under Cone 6, there are 5 ways to do it, but only 2 of them really matter. And the big one is boron. We talk about boron all the time. The second most popular way that people will bring temperatures down to Cone 6 is what we call the Bristol reaction. And the Bristol reaction is this interesting chemical reaction that happens when you have calcium and zinc together. Those 2 materials create what's called a eutectic. And you hear the word eutectic sometimes out in ceramics, usually used wrong. But a eutectic is a special chemical reaction where you create a temperature that is lower than either material is able to achieve on its own. So like calcium has a baseline temperature and it'll only flux down to that. And zinc has a baseline temperature and it only flux down to that. And both of those actually are about Cone 10. But when you combine them in the right proportion, they will melt at Cone 6. And that's the eutectic reaction. That's the Bristol reaction. And so the Bristol reactions are pretty cool. There's a lot of glazes out there that have the Bristol reaction, and most of them are fine. But a couple of years ago, one of our longtime students, Janine Veers, in Belgium, shout out to Janine, she's one of our favorites. She had been doing some testing, and she had found a really weird behavior. That she was looking at a Bristol glaze that she had developed, and she was doing some exposure testing where she was doing the Belgian version of the lemon test, which is the rhubarb test.
I did not know that. All right. That's a fun fact.
It is. Rhubarb is very acidic. It has what's called oxalic acid in it. And any type of acid would etch a glaze if the glaze is weak enough. And she had this Bristol glaze where she tried it with cobalt and with chrome and manganese and iron, and they were all fine. But the one that had copper in it, the glaze was eaten away, just gone. And I'm a pretty big skeptic on the lemon test. I don't think it's a particularly good test, but it does show that like really bad glazes are really bad. Like if you are seeing a change in your glaze from the lemon test, like run far, far away from that glaze. And she was testing the same base glaze, and it was fine with the cobalt and with the iron, but with the copper, it just ate away at that glaze. And I was like, wow, that is fascinating. So we'd done some more research, and we had actually found that we'd been seeing this particular reaction for a long time. In fact, crystalline potters will often already know this effect because crystalline potters will often do what's called acid etching, where they will take their pots and soak them in acid. And it sort of eats away at the glaze, but it also sort of bleaches them white and, sort of has these cool effects. Well, why do they get those effects? It most of the time is because of this weakness in Bristol glazes, because what are most crystalline glazes? They're zinc and calcium. So you actually have this chemical reaction buried in them. And then when you soak them in acid, it like sort of destroys the glaze, but it makes it look cool. And, don't we all just care about the cool looking things? We don't care how it actually works. But,
Of course not.
but yeah, so we sort of knew that. So we had known this and we'd been researching it and trying to figure it out. And I had recently had a friend of mine who has a chemistry lab. He's a college professor, reach out and say, hey, do you have any test glazes you want tested for leaching? And I said, oh, yeah. And I gave him some Bristol glazes with copper. And then I also gave him some Cone 6 glazes with boron and copper. The boron and copper Cone 6 glazes came out fine, like fine. No real problems with them. The Bristol glazes with copper came out horribly, massive amounts of leaching. And what was even more interesting that we found in the testing is that it wasn't just leaching copper, it was leaching copper and zinc, which is fascinating. So it really does go to indicate that there is some inherent weakness that is going on between copper and zinc. And so this is sort of the thing that we are now looking at. We don't know why it happens. This is trying to figure out the science. We have not found the scientific definition as to why it happens, but I am fairly comfortable saying that like it's a thing, and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable with the durability of those glazes. Now, copper is not a particularly toxic material. I'm not concerned about it from that, but if people who have studied with us will know that one of the things that we are really concerned with glaze durability is really more about the quality of the pots that your users see. So like if you're making glazes with this Bristol copper reaction and you sell the pot and somebody goes home and puts a hot toddy in their mug and that's got the lemon juice in it, and all of a sudden that color has changed because it is going to strip the glaze or it starts to decompose texturally, like that's not great. And so I wouldn't say this is like a warning flashing like everything's going to go crazy, but like I'm not real crazy about the Bristol glazes with copper in them right now. The other Bristol glazes, we see no evidence of problems, but it is very specifically the Bristol glazes with copper. And what makes it worse is there's a lot of them. Like there's a lot of them when you look at the recipes that are out in the world. Because it looks cool. Like the Bristol glazes with copper, they work, they look cool. You don't have to buy a frit, which is expensive. But if you are using those, I would definitely say consider keeping them out of interior surfaces in particular.
I mean, if you could forget about the copper and you had glazes that leach zinc, could you sell your pottery and say it prevents colds?
Interesting.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Medicinal ceramics.
Not just what's in them, it's what's in them.
So specifically, it is the copper zinc combo. That's okay. All right.
And it doesn't matter which form of copper. It could be copper carbonate or copper oxide. It's about the melted chemistry, not the raw materials in any sort of way. And like I said, you don't have to freak out and lose your mind, but I would seriously consider using those as liner glazes.
Right. And if somebody's in their studio right now looking suspect at a bucket, what would you say? How do they know that they've got one of these? What are they looking for?
It's really easy. Look at that recipe. Okay. So a glaze recipe is going to have, at cone 6 is going to have 5 components for a Bristol glaze. You're going to have a feldspar, Nefsi, Mahavir G200 Minspar, or sodium potassium feldspar for our international friends. Then you're going to see whiting or calcium carbonate, right, is the technical name, and or wollastonite. Those are the 2 major calcium sources we have, and then zinc oxide. Okay, so you're going to see those 2 materials is whiting, calcium, and zinc oxide, and then kaolin and silica. And so watch out. If you've got a cone, if you go look at your cone 6 glaze recipes, and if you see whiting, zinc, and then copper in the colorants, then time to rethink your relationship.
And you have, I think on your blog, the Ceramic Materials Workshop blog, you have had posts about Bristol glazes before, yeah? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're there,
So
and the video on YouTube is our Cracking the Kiln. I think the title's just Bristol Glaze. I forget.
It is just Bristol glazes.
How inventive. Okay. Well, so
I need an ointment. Or Kathy just burned me.
All right. So we are going to get to our questions. I'm so excited. Our first question, Rose and Matt, comes from Melissa from San Francisco, and she's asking about some alternative surfaces.
Hi, For Flux Sake. My name is Melissa from the San Francisco Bay Area. Can you please talk about liquid quartz products or different alternatives that are now starting to be available in the US? Are they really safe to use on functional products that are going to be used for dinnerware? Can it really turn an unvitrified piece that has been raku or pit fired into a more functional piece? And what precautions should we use when using the product? Thanks so much.
Great question.
That is a good question.
They're popping up all over. So,
Rose, would you like to give your opinion?
My opinion is to steer clear completely of products that claim to make something from, not vitrified or under fire to fine for functional wear. I would steer clear so fast of that.
So you're saying to just avoid anything if you're not firing it and you're going to sell this or use it, sell it to people who are using functional work, especially. That's not a great idea.
Yes, not a great idea. This stuff is a sealer. It's been around for a while. It's stuff that you can seal tile with. So the tile company I used to work for sold a crackle glaze, and it's not crazy. It's crackle when you want it. And that crackle glaze, they always said, well, you need to seal it before you put grout to finish your product. And that sealer, basically you install your tile, you put the sealer on, and then you can grout it. And that sealer will stop the grout from going in that crazing, because otherwise you're going to show off all that crazing on your tile. So it was kind of a stopgap already, like, oh, here, let's make your tile more durable in this installation you just spent a large chunk of money on. We can make it last a little longer. So it wasn't a great practice then, and I don't think you should be putting it on stuff that's going to be used for functional wear, because I certainly wouldn't.
So, well, in terms of like raku was mentioned, and if nobody's eating spaghetti off of raku plates. I don't think. I don't think, maybe.
You can't
But if
assume.
That is kind
True.
of the sales pitch of the product is not Raku, but it is very specifically aimed at pit-fired work.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I guess same difference. Does it make it makes it watertight,
Right.
or does it?
Well,
Hmm.
what it is, this is where you have to read very carefully. I think that the marketing on these products is very loose and limber with the reality of the situation. But when you sort of go to the website and read the terms and conditions, it says some very specific things, like cannot make your underfired or toxic glazes food safe. It is a permeating sealer and will not seal over a glaze and is not, it is designed for unglazed ceramics. But I think that the marketing still can certainly imply that it may. And that's a big problem. When you read their website, they very specifically say it is for pit fired work to retain the smoky appearance.
Oh, well, that is specific. I mean,
It is.
yeah.
And then they will also imply, because I may have had discourse with some of these companies, where I have said that this is not a permanent product, to which they turn around and say, oh, well, we have had pots with this product on them in restaurants for X number of years. To which I say,
Where in a restaurant? Like on the tile on the wall or on the dishes you're serving to your customers? Where in a restaurant?
but not just that. A number of years does not mean permanent, everybody.
No.
That's irrelevant. This stuff, some people in the nerd community have dug around and they have found that it is essentially one of those stone countertop sealers or tile sealers. So what it does is that it basically clogs up the pores with it. But it's a temporary solution. It is not a permanent solution. It is a solution that is going to wash away. And I'm not saying it's tomorrow, but it's going to wash away. But again, that the language is interesting. Quartz is in the name of the big popular product. They emphasize how there's silica in it. Oh man, there is so many different forms of silica and ways of using silica, but they are going very hard at implying that silica is there and silica is in glazes, and so it's like it's a glaze. Oh, that is a twist going on that I can't get behind that as a thing. And so everything that Rose says, it's a temporary sealer for a specific application.
Well, and too in the tile industry, like they recommend sealing your tile. You have to reseal it every few years still. So they're already saying that it doesn't last. So if you like it's not a permanent solution.
Sounds like a nice option for sculpture, though.
Yeah,
Sculpture,
yeah.
fine.
Absolutely.
Sculpture, fine. I understand its purpose. And when you look at the technical details of how its technical sheets are laid out, yeah, it's fine for that application. Would I serve food on it? No, I wouldn't. But we also know my position on serving food in highly porous clay bodies and the inherent issues with that. And why water absorption is such a big problem in our ceramics. And I get it, and I get that people are looking for an answer. But it's not like a revolution. It's not a magic way to solve your problems. Going back to all of our conversations about vitrification, like, is slapping some of this product on your cone 6 clays that are under vitrified a solution? No, it is not. If you have pit fired work and you want to preserve it, you want to put it outside in the rain and not have it wash away, like, sure, that's absolutely fine. Is it quote unquote non-toxic and food safe? I don't deny that it is. I'm not trying to imply that it isn't. But you have to go back to what those definitions mean, which is like, can the raw product be consumed by a human and pass through their bodies? And like, yeah, fine, it can do that. It's not going to hurt you to that end. But is it solving a ceramic problem in the way that a lot of the community thinks it is? That's where I go, oh, that is the grayest of gray areas.
Right. So read the small print. That's our advice. Absolutely.
100%.
So let's keep going because lots of questions in the queue. We have our next question is coming in from Pamela from Western Washington. And Pamela asked, how do you substitute Gerstley Borate in my Raku and Cone 6 glazes? Gillespie was a disaster. Now, that's not a whole lot of information. Like everyone, I've talked about this on the podcast before. We had to redo, a lot of our Cone 6 glazes. We did use Gillespie. It worked. It just took some time to figure out what the right water was. It just changed the nature of the glaze. We had some settling issues, and it's taken us months, but we've got it down now. So I don't know what the issue was with Pamela's.
Are you still using Gillespie?
We are. With the few that we just couldn't battle with, we switched to Mahavir, and that worked great.
The real catch, though, that is why Gillespie's okay for you and it's not okay for Pamela is the Raku part.
Okay.
Because the thing about Raku temperatures is that they are crazy low. Okay. And we got to go back, lay down the foundation of glazes. We are making glass. That is what we are doing. And the materials that make up our glass are still silicon alumina at every temperature. It's always silicon alumina, and they have crazy high melting temperatures. So we can use fluxes and get them down to cone 10, and that works well. And then if we want to get under cone 10, we're talking about temperature. The number one thing that people do is boron. And boron works really well down to about cone 04, right? And after you go below cone 04, things start to get a little bit rough. Those of you who've seen our YouTube video on glow-in-the-dark glazes, the hardest thing about developing that glow-in-the-dark glaze was making a glaze that would melt at cone 08 because we couldn't get the glow-in-the-dark powder to fire any higher than cone 08 because it burns up. And so that glaze is 95%. Was 95% 3195, Rose? I think it was 95.
Yeah.
And Frit 3195 is double the boron of every other Frit. Double. And so Frit 3134 and Frit 3124, the normal Frits that people are using at cone 6, those won't melt at cone 08. At 04, they're okay. But boron levels basically become exponential in how much you need under cone 08. Well, Raku temperatures are down there, if not lower. Because we fire Raku kilns so fast, we have to remember, we're not firing to a temperature, we're firing to the completion of a chemical reaction. And those reactions can happen lower and slower or faster and hotter. Well, the Raku firings are faster, but they are not hotter to compensate. So those temperatures may be cone 010, 012, and to get enough boron to melt becomes a huge problem. So why do we say this? Why does Gerstley Borate work? Gerstley Borate works because its boron level, from a UMF perspective, sorry nerds, this has got to go nerd talk, it is about 0.75 boron, which is huge. And on top of it, it has very low silica and alumina. And that helps because the lower the amounts of silica and alumina, the less of that high temperature material you're trying to melt. Gillespie Borate is about 0.5 via UMF. So a third less boron. And that is just going to keep those temperatures from going even lower. And that becomes a huge problem when you're trying to get that temperature down. It is not as low as it can be. We don't do a ton of Raku, but I had a student, Kyle Bird, shout out to Kyle, who did do a bunch of testing, and we tried every chemical trick that we had, and it really came out that the Gerstley was kind of its own thing. for the Raku glazes he was working on, that nothing else was quite that effective to get the Raku glazes to work as just the straight up Gerstley. And it's a pickle. It's a pickle. I'm pretty skeptical about raw materials, and I always say, anything can work because it's all just chemistry at the end of the day. But it's also about the chemistry that those raw materials are contributing. And Gerstley just has so much more boron and so much less silicon aluminum than anything else that I think it's pretty hard. And for your studio, getting rid of Gerstley, great. Get rid of it, bring in the other one, match the chemistry. It's fine because you don't need that much boron in Cone 6. But man, there is still Gerstley out there. It is not cheap, but if you're a Raku person, I would probably say invest in the Gerstley. I have heard tale of people looking at other boron sources, but we're still waiting to see. We're still waiting to see what comes. But for Raku, it may be worth the Gerstley price.
Well, and Gillespie, I mean, I'm assuming that she said Gillespie was a disaster. It's probably because of its working properties. I mean, Kathy, you even said it. You have to find your right water content. You have to let it age. It's a different beast than Gerstley Borate is too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just don't think about, we talk about the chemistry all the time, but then we don't put enough emphasis on just the nature of the glaze, like that it's thicker. It just doesn't look the same even, it just changes everything about it. You have to relearn how to, use that glaze and what to expect.
A lot of the physical properties are that's an unusual one is Gerstley, or it's the Gillespie Borate. It's unusual and its physical properties are just so different. You have to handle it and pay attention. And
right. Yeah. And, if you think about a community studio, the old way of teaching is, you dunk your piece into the glaze bucket and it's 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, and so no more. It is one miss. It is just one miss.
I was talking with a student of ours in a class just last night, Jerry, and they were talking about how in their public studio, they have this huge problem that all of the pots, all the glazes run with the new students, and that they were looking at, we're going to try to fire, lower. And I was like, yeah, you just got to thin out that glaze. Because they're getting too much glaze, and students, they're going to be bad with their counting, and that thickness, that viscosity can be a big issue. I mean, for Rose, that was, you're in the tile industry. A lot of your work was more about getting the application right than the chemistry.
Oh yes, application. Oh my goodness, it had to go through so many steps to get the application right. I mean, first of all, it was a mechanically applied glaze, so it was, it had to go through certain steps. It had to be the right dryness. It had to be the right shape. It had to be the porous enough so it accept the glaze. It had to dry before it got to the end of the line before it moved. It was so much about the working of this glaze that the end product was just stick it in a box, get it out of here. It was you really had to baby the application of it.
It's a trick.
Yeah. This was super educational. I learned a lot today. Mm-hmm.
Your brain hurts.
My brain hurt. I'm going to put it on ice.
The more you know.
Next to the vodka and the tonic.
What she's saying is we drive Kathy to drink. I get
it. Oh, yes. All right. So until we see each other again, I miss you already. Bye, Matt and Rose.
Hey,
Bye, Kathy.
Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week. And if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at ForFluxSakePodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time. And when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system. Beep.